And with Carvana, you kind of looked around and you said with Ben, you were trying to focus on why people left car dealerships with a stomach ache. Isn't that right?
Yeah, so I think that's what it reduces to, and so I think there are many car dealers that do a great job, and so I don't mean to paint with too broad a brush, right? But there's no doubt about the fact that the industry has a reputation that's not great, and it's one of the worst. I mean, that's just it's the butt of jokes for a reason, and so you have to then ask yourself, is there something about the product itself that makes it very hard to give a customer an experience that they're excited about, or is there something about the way that it's done? And I think when we were trying to investigate that question, given the experience that I had interning in that business and similar businesses earlier in my life, I was never convinced that it was inherent to the product. It always felt like it was the way the business was done, and then you have to start to ask yourself, why is business done that way, and why is it leading to all these things? I think those are complicated questions with a bunch of things that we think we arrived at in terms of insights, but we weren't convinced that it had to be that way. And to me, there's so many businesses today that are built, and businesses in general, I don't mean to say today, I think across time, that are built with a business model purpose. We're going to shoot for these kinds of margins. We're going to be this kind of business structure. When we were launching Carvana, the complete craze was marketplaces, and the only way you could be successful is you got to build a business that's a marketplace. But to me, the truth of any great business over time is that you can't start with some business feature. You have to start with a customer and what the customer cares about, and you have to have something that's just pretty simple and human that you're trying to resolve. And to me, the simplest way to articulate that was a stomach ache. Customers walk out of buying a car, and all too often, they wonder if they paid the right price. They wonder if they bought the right car. They're nervous about explaining, to Uncle Car Guy, the deal that they just got, because they're afraid that he's going to explain to them the 5 things they did wrong. And so, this process of getting, one of the biggest products that you buy, that you're incredibly excited about, that you've thought about for months and months before you did it, and so should be like this really exciting life moment, it ends up being a point of anxiety. And I think that was the route that we saw, and we thought there was an opportunity to make that better, and that's what kicked off the idea for Carvana.
Yeah, you knew that customer preferences were changing. You knew that technology was evolving, and you knew that the traditional way of doing it was changing less, right? So there was white space.
Exactly, and to me, that's the way that we always try to think about innovation, in anything. I think that the best possible business model for anything is a function of what are customer preferences at the time, and then what are technologies that are available, and are we going to be able to build something with these new technologies that matches these new preferences. And I think that one of the great indications of opportunity is if an offering that customers face has not changed for a long time, and the customer preferences have, and the technology has, that suggests that there's probably a new way to do it, because things have changed a lot since the original business model was designed, and so we thought there was a lot of opportunity there.
Did you emulate any particular companies as you were crafting this idea?
Sure. I mean, I think you grow up and you get exposure to all the companies that are the great companies at the time. So you're paying attention to Apple and Steve Jobs, and you're listening to the way that he thought about innovation, which was much less about testing and iterating and way more about imagining. And you're seeing Jeff Bezos building Amazon, and his constant focus on customers and on scale, and a willingness to invest in fixed expense to build lower variable expense and better customer experiences. And at the time, Elon Musk was just starting to be, kind of become what he is in kind of the public mind today. And you're kind of seeing things there. I don't think, unfortunately, we share anything in common with him. I think we fall way short of him in every measurable category. But you're paying attention to all these things, and you're trying to learn from them. And so I think, of course, those companies served as a backdrop when we thought about what we thought the right solution for customers was.
So bottom line, you wanted to create an experience for the customer to pick up the car in person. And the initial effort came in the form of a garage with glass doors and a keypad. And the customer could get the car a day faster than by delivery and provide a fun reveal, if you will, right? Their first garage, correct me if I'm wrong, about $150,000 to produce, and
Yeah,
jokingly called a vending machine.
exactly. Well, so and let me even take one step back from that. So just to really quick kind of describe the business that we were trying to build. So we talked about this root of resolve, the customer stomach ache. And then I think when you think about in any retail business, like what drives a customer experience, a customer is looking for a great deal, right? So you need to build a business model that enables you to give them a great deal. They want to have a broad selection. They might not articulate it as a broad selection. They may because it's fun to browse, but even if they don't articulate it as a broad selection, they may articulate it as, I want you to have the car that I want. But that requires that you as a business have a great selection. And then they want to have a fun and easy experience. And so, what we set out to do is we said, okay, taking all these lessons that we had learned from all these other businesses that we had watched, how do we build a business model that gives customers those things, leveraging modern technology, because that's what modern customer preferences are looking for. And so we settled on, let's have centralized inventory, let's have this inventory available nationwide so customers can go to a website and they can buy it. They're going to give up a test drive. But by giving up the test drive, now all of a sudden we can have nationwide inventory available on a single website. We can have lower prices. We can deliver to them. We can let them have a 7-day return policy. We can make the transaction really simple where it's self-service through the entire website, so we don't have the traditional expenses of a dealership, and that will enable us to offer lower prices. And so that was kind of like the initial goal. And it wasn't about e-commerce. It wasn't about selling cars online. It was about how do we use modern technology to achieve these consumer goals of better selection, better price, better experience. And in doing all that, one of the things we had to build was a logistics network to then get a car that had been purchased online to a customer. And so we were delivering them to a customer's door as soon as the next day. But then we kind of quickly realized, okay, well, to do that as cost effectively as possible, which is really important here, we then need to have some location where we're staging cars when inside of the city where the customer lives before we deliver to the customer, because we don't want to deliver from our centralized inspection centers nationwide. We want to deliver into a city to a centralized location and then do last mile from there. And so we were already creating hubs inside of cities, and our first one was in Atlanta. And then we kind of went to this place where we said, okay, well, this last mile costs us money and it takes us a little bit of time. What if we could get customers to come pick up? Maybe they want to do that, maybe they don't, but let's test and let's try to figure it out, because then we can save them even more money and we can get them the car even faster. And if those things are important to them, then maybe that's a good direction for us to go. So as you said, all we did is we invested around $150,000, kind of putting glass garage doors up, and they had a little pin on the outside. And when a customer selected pickup, we would send them an email, and that email had a pin, and so they'd type in, whatever it was, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the garage door would go up, and they would take receipt of their car, and we would be there to explain the features of the car and everything to them. And so that was kind of this experience, and our marketing team decided to call it a vending machine, which was what it was. To me, it was a passing thought, and it was clever, great. Let's call it that, and let's see where this all goes. But we were not a hot Silicon Valley company with venture capital investors that had a lot of attention from the media prior to that point. We could not get anyone to cover us to save our lives, and we were trying so hard to get any coverage, because for a startup, media coverage is one of the only ways to get your word out that's costless, right? To me, that's one of the advantages that Silicon Valley has that a lot of the rest of the country doesn't have, is there's an entire media apparatus that's sitting there to cover startups that gets the early adopter population exposure to these companies early on. And so, we were looking for equivalence, right? And we couldn't find it. And then we called this vending machine, or we called this apparatus the vending machine. And all of a sudden, we were on the homepage of Yahoo. And I remember I came home that night, and I went on Google Analytics, because I couldn't believe that there were like 42 people or whatever it was on our website at the same time. And I went on my iPhone, and I basically zoomed in to real-time analytics so I could just see the numbers, because they're clicking up and down by 1 or 2 every couple seconds. And I blew it up, and I plugged it in so the screen wouldn't turn off. And I kind of put it at an angle so I could see it while I sat with my wife and pretended like I was watching the show that we were watching. And really, I just watched 42 turn to 43, turn to 41, and I couldn't believe how exciting that was.
Right.
But that was the first time that we really got a little bit of coverage.
So then you identify an engineering firm in Germany to actually build you a vending machine.
Yeah, so I think with that raging success of 42 people jumping on the website, we knew we had something. But then we also knew that we weren't yet, necessarily living up to what a vending machine really could be. So we realized, okay, there's actually a fundamental reason for this, and people love cool things. And I think sometimes in business we can forget that, right? We can focus too much on rationality and numbers, but people love things that are cool and fun, right? If I'm going to buy a car once every 5 or 6 years, having an awesome experience that I can tell my friends about, that's attractive. And then me telling my friends about it economically works out. And so we had this nugget of an idea that then kind of we realized had legs, because we had the success of being on Yahoo's homepage and seeing all these customers come to our site. So we, jumped online and started Googling, how could we build a real car vending machine? And it probably took us a week and 100 phone calls to figure out where to go. And then, I jumped on a red eye out to Germany and spent literally, I think, 14 hours on the ground with this company. And we came up with a deal to build one, and we made it happen.
Were they the ones that also did the Volkswagen headquarters in Wolfsburg, where they have a very similar concept?
They were not that same company, but they were a company with similar capabilities.
Similar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.